Artificial intelligence, as we see it, is maybe the final technology we build. The outcomes are just very binary. The world will never be the same again. You can tell an AI to simulate that it's Hitler or it's Mother Teresa, and it will adopt that persona. And then you look at Pliny the Liberator, who jailbreaks these things in 2 seconds. If I find that a model comes out and he doesn't jailbreak it, I'll lower my P2 maybe. It's like, what can I do about that 50% do scenario? I can build a policy engine that every government will use that's fully open source. I can give everyone universal AI. Then you probably have a better chance at surviving.
Welcome to Doom Debates. My guest, Emad Mostaque, has become one of the most prominent leaders in the AI industry. He co-founded Stability AI, which released the massively popular open source image generator Stable Diffusion and helped set in motion today's AI revolution. He is an Oxford-educated mathematician, a former hedge fund manager, a frequent contributor on the Moonshots podcast with Peter Diamandis, and recently an Amazon best-selling author of a book called The Last Economy. Emad is not shy about sharing his opinion. He's stated that he has a PDOOM of 50%. He's signed multiple open statements acknowledging the extinction risk posed by superintelligent AI. Now, as founder and CEO of Intelligent Internet, he's trying to kickstart what he calls a symbiotic economy, a world where AI benefits rather than replaces humans. He says we have less than 1,000 days to steer our economy before it's too late. So today, I'm excited to explore Emad's mainline AI doom scenario and learn more about his vision for AI and what he calls the last economy. Emad Mostaque, welcome to Doom Debates.
Thank you for having me on.
I think most of my viewers know a little bit about you from Stability AI. Take us back to the pivotal moment. How did you get into the AI revolution so early and very high level? How did it all play out from your perspective?
Oh gosh, so I was a hedge fund manager originally, and then about 15 years ago, my son was diagnosed with autism, ASD, and it was very severe, and they said there was no cure or treatment. So back then, built an AI team and did some original language classification and more. The tools are quite a lot more primitive then, to try and figure out what could possibly cause it. And we ended up doing a lot of knowledge-based work and others to do drug repurposing. And he went to mainstream school, which is pretty cool. Then I went back to doing some hedge fund stuff until COVID came along in 2020. And then I was like, this is like autism, a multi-systemic condition that current science isn't going to keep up with. We need to go back to first principles. So I designed and launched an initiative called Kayak, Collective Augmented Intelligence Against COVID-19. We launched at Stanford High to say, let's use AI to organize our collective knowledge on COVID. Because most listeners still now probably don't even know what causes it or what the progress of the symptoms are. And everyone was doing the same thing. As a result of that, we had lots of promises from lots of AI labs about all the AI we could use, and we got almost none of those promises come through for danger reasons or for commercial reasons or others to build this resource backed by the UN that would have helped a lot of people. So at that point, I was like, what to do now? You just started to see the first GPTs and others. We actually trained a GPT for COVID knowledge. And then I was like, these models need to have an open equivalent for safety and for morality and others. And that led to the establishment of Stability AI, where we had about 300 million downloads of our open source models from Stable Diffusion, but also state-of-the-art audio, video, 3D, and more, as well as I think we were probably the third largest grant maker of compute in the US at one point. So we did things like OpenFold, we helped Liquid AI, we helped a whole bunch of others, and communities such as Eleuther and Lion get going. So datasets, models, and more. And so that was kind of the story of how we got to Stability and how I got into AI.
You definitely caught the wave right when it happened. And now I think you've mentioned on other podcasts, eventually after you had all this hype and so many people were using Stable Diffusion, you realized that it was going to be more of a commodity, right? Like everybody's going to be generating images and videos. And that was kind of the spark of your next act, correct?
Well, I think it was partially that, but it was also seeing that the capabilities, if you extrapolated them just naturally, looking at the data distribution initially and where it's going, were going to tap out around about now. And the level that they'd tap out was above a good person in terms of, like a professional at their tasks. Once you did those and you went from creation to composition, to being able to validate the outputs, you could automate basically almost all cognitive labor. So a couple of years ago, I was like, this is bad. And we're going to have AIs that are going to run our justice system, teach our kids, manage our health. And are they going to be built right? No, because there's going to be misaligned incentives, leaving aside the existential threat of these technologies. If you only had a few people building them and you had an interface that's controlled by them, it's going to end up very bad. So that's why I decided, let other people do the media side. I mean, it's cool, remake Game of Thrones Season 8 or whatever, and instead build AI for the public. So that's what we're doing, Intelligent Internet AI for health, sovereign AI, government, policy, etc.
So let's start there. Give us the 60-second pitch for intelligent AI.
Yeah, so Intelligent Internet, the idea was, let's build an open source AI stack, so state-of-the-art agents, models if needed, systems, and more, that could be deployed at a state or community level or individual level to teach your kids, manage your health, guide your government, etc. So that goes from that agent that's next to you, because that's the most important agent, because we can see now agent coordination is everything, right? One agent calls a whole host of other agents, just like your trusted aide, all the way through to AI systems to advise on policy and government and tax. Like, I'm sure many listeners would be like, I mean, it's not like an AI will do a worse job than many of our leaders, right? But it could. It really matters how we built those in transparent ways. Like, do they serve the American people, those AIs? Are they transparent? Or is it like the Trump tariffs that were probably done on ChatGPT, So as we skate towards that inevitable future, I was like, let's build that open stack. And so that's what we've been doing, like the open source civic AI stack, as it were.
So the idea is you want governments to get on the stack, correct?
So yeah, except for the way we're doing it is a little bit different in that governments won't know what to do. Private companies are misaligned. So we were like, why don't we set up what we call state champions? We'll be announcing a lot more of this soon, whereby the equity is owned by every citizen in that state. And so it's locally owned like a utility, again, the commodification thing. It runs the stack like a Linux. And then that is the default universal AI for everyone. It's the AI that helps guide the government, guide the institutions, etc. Because you need something in between a public enterprise and a private enterprise. And giving everyone their own AIs and building that stack, you can do some really interesting things. So we're about to kick that off now that we've got mature agents.
Can we pick like a realistic early use case, like a specific organization that you think is going to get a lot of early value from this?
Yeah, so one of the things we had was an initiative called SAGE, the Sovereign AI Governance Engine. This is with Future Investment Initiative by Saudi. With my friend Peter Diamandis, we announced that a few months ago. We're about to have a V1. It's a full stack intelligent policy agent system, and it'll be made free to every single government and hopefully a layer below for all the latest advances in technology, be it quantum, AI, or others. Like you've seen Yoshua Bengio and others now have 3-6-month turnarounds with their AI capabilities reports. We think these things need to be live and transparent. And so we've been building a full system that whenever there's a report comes out, for example, you have MHC by DeepSeek, right? What does that mean for timelines live? What does it mean for timelines in Mexico? What does it mean when you have an advance in robotics for the people of Rwanda? Or what are the latest technologies that can be used positively and the things that you need to worry about? So it's a multilingual full stack policy engine with agents that can be run remotely or locally for governments, policy institutes, and others, because the technology is just moving in a crazy, crazy pace. And they need to know what's going on in a transparent and verifiable way.
Are you expecting a specific early milestone date? Like, hey, by this date, we think this particular organization will really demonstrate the value?
Yeah, we have dozens of nations already lined up, multinationals, etc. We're making the announcements in a couple of months, and the system will be live in September, I believe, to just about everyone, as well as fully open source and downloadable. So you'll see in around about June, the first few dozen institutions, and then September, everything will be open sourced.
Okay, let's circle back to the number one theme of this show. Here we go. Roll the
P-Doom. P-Doom, what's your P-Doom? What's your P-Doom? What's your P-Doom?
Emad Mostaque, remind us, what is your P-Doom?
My P-Doom is 50%.
Okay, yeah, can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, so I think that artificial intelligence as we see it is the most capable technology we've ever built, and maybe the final technology we build. And the outcomes are just very binary. The world will never be the same again. In my book and my economic work, I've shown how it affects society in terms of you can't compete with them in the private sector. But beyond that, we're kind of building technologies that we teach at school, but we don't teach at home. Like, home is where you learn your morality, your values, and more. And far be it from even having like laws of robotics equivalent elements in there, most of these things are taught with no values whatsoever. In fact, they're just a simulacrum of our collective understanding. And I think there's a whole variety of ways that can end very, very badly as they enter system critical work, as they go from the singletons to swarms. And on the other side, I think if you get it right, then you can solve most of the world's issues, which is fantastic. So that's why I think it's a bit binary, and takeoff is around about now to the next few years, which is also a little bit scary.
When did you start thinking that your P-Doom is 50%?
Again, it was a couple of years ago. That's why I was like, let's leave. I was like, how does stuff spread? Like, I remember when the first Pause AI letter came out. I think I was the only AI CEO apart from Elon, who was going to be an AI CEO after, who signed that. First of all, I needed a break. I was like, we need a 6-month break because it's just too much. But more than that, it was a case of there was no discussion. Then some might say the discussion went to doom, and then the discussion went back the other way. And it's very difficult to get people to coordinate on this technology because our brains can't really think about it properly. So a couple of years ago, I was like, I just see two binary outcomes. Wouldn't it be great if governments had an open policy engine for this, if the people could have their say on this? Because at the very least, if there is a non-P-Doom of 0, which obviously it has to be greater than 0. In fact, most of the AI folk are like 10-20%, which is Russian roulette odds, which isn't great. Then there should be more civic discussion about this in an educated way, given that even if it doesn't kill us, it will impact every part of our lives.
Very true. Well, that's what we're doing right now. We're going to have some civic discussion for the viewers. And yeah, you did. I was going to bring that up. So in 2023, you signed that open letter to pause giant AI experiments, also known as the famous Pause AI letter. And like you said, co-signed by Elon Musk, Yuval Noah Harari, 33,000 others. And you later signed the Center for AI Safety Statement on AI Risk, the one that says mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. You called it the minimum viable existential risk statement. Do you think right now one of the most important things we can do is build common knowledge that P-Doom is high?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've seen, Eliezer Nate's new book and others kind of building towards this. You're seeing people really feel it now as their jobs are changing. We've seen that transition from Andre Carpathy saying, 80% of my code is human, to who needs to look at code anymore, right? Like the best people in the world.
Yeah, the job apocalypse is an appetizer, right, for what's coming.
It's an appetizer for what's coming. And again, we'll get more into that. I think there needs to be more public discussion, but there also needs to be actual practical things. Because I think the general perception is wrong. And this is something I've realized in particular over the last year. You don't need massive amounts of compute for AGI. And it's completely stupid to think that. Intelligence is really about, and this is what we did. What is diffusion technology? You add noise to something, you destroy it down to its minimal part, and then you figure out how to reconstruct it, right? And so that's basically optimal transport. What's the shortest way? The Schrodinger bridge from A to B. What we did with Stable Diffusion 3 and now with Sora and Seedance and Ever is kind of rectified flow where you literally find the shortest path from A to B, and that's what genius is. It's the shortest path from A to B. The smartest people in the world isn't a million Einsteins in a data center. It's one person asking the right question. It's knowing what that shortest path is. And the amount of energy you need for that is absolutely minimal. So I think that this whole thing about the world being tiled with data centers and everything, I don't think we need any more compute than we have now to build ASI.
I think this is becoming a popular opinion. I think you might have gotten more pushback a couple years ago, but it was always clear to me and many of my fellow AI doomers. You just look at Einstein's brain, you notice it runs on 20 watts, you notice it uses inefficient chemical moving parts, it's made out of biological cells, and yet it's Einstein, right? And then you look at our data centers and they use megawatts and they have all these other overpowered specs. So it was always a pretty obvious prediction of like, yeah, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure out the efficiency parameter. And you agree, right?
Yeah, but I think it's quicker than people expect. And I think that's the thing, because one of the things was, let's stop data center build out. Not good enough anymore. I think that you've started to see again the first elements of that with OpenClaw, right? Like, obviously Maltbook and things like that were a bit made up. But the capability of a Qwen 27B model is frontier level as of last summer. And that's, I think, about as much as you need to do just about anything when tuned right, because it's an S-curve in terms of capability and satisficing. When you start combining them, when you have persistent memory and others, that's it. That's all you need to have for takeoff. And so I think we're pretty much there at the moment. And then that's a bit, again, scary. That's what I saw a year or two ago. I was like, the compute would go up and then it would come down in terms of requirements to achieve good and bad things, shall we say. Certainly superhuman level stuff, which is the big question mark. What happens when the AIs go superhuman? You know, are they aligned, misaligned, whatever?
The consensus AI timeline these days is that we'll have true AGI in the sense of doing most economically valuable work by 2032. I think these days it's more like 2030. Is that roughly your best guess timeline as well?
Yeah, I said a couple of years from now, almost all cognitive work would be economically irrelevant. Not you'd lose your job. It's just that your company could push a button and it takes all your chat logs and all of your drafts and every single piece of output, even your face, and creates a digital double of you that costs maybe $10 a month, to run. I mean, like, again, COVID was the exemplar of this, right? So many people could do their job remotely. If you could do your job remotely via COVID, your job is at risk. Because we also have to look at this whole thing of Jevons paradox and using all the tokens. I'm a really smart guy, relatively speaking. I find it really difficult to use more than 1 billion tokens a day. And the amount of tokens you have per unit of intelligent output is also collapsing. Like, Cursor used 3 billion tokens to do a 3 million line browser from scratch. In a year, it'll be 3 million tokens for 3 million tokens output. That's also dropping. And the price per token is dropping by 10, 100 times per year. So I think that the economic disruption is here this year, and within 2 years, roughly, it's everywhere. Like I said, people's jobs won't necessarily go because people don't like to fire people. It's like a bit lonely. But definitely in the private sector in particular, it gets really tough.
So we already compared notes. We think AGI is coming. We think it's going to be token efficient. These are important load-bearing beliefs. What about this idea of super intelligence? Do you believe that there's a lot of headroom above human intelligence? So, maybe it's hard to talk about 1,000 or 1,000,000 IQ points, but whatever Mojo, von Neumann had, Einstein had, do you feel like it's just because they're close to having perfect play and the AI just can't do much better than an Einstein or a von Neumann? Or it's more like more complex games like Go or Go on an N-by-N board, whatever you want to say, right? The arbitrarily complex games. And in fact, these intelligences can really surprise us with how much smarter they are than us.
So I think there's two types of intelligence here, right? One is intelligence on a defined playing field where you're looking for underlying structure. Like Einstein was very famous for his physical intuition. And, there is the question that Demis posed recently, and Brian Keating did previously. It'll be AGI if you had everything trained to 1911 and it can figure out general relativity, right? And
right.
So that's basically saying, can the AI intuit Einstein's theory postulate of relativity, which is you have a lab in space and everything is the same, Like the experiment's the same no matter what velocity you're going there. I think that that's a very interesting way to look at it, and I don't think we're that far off because we have multiple instances of intuition. But I think that the reality of something like physics, there's only one algorithm for physics. There's only one set of equations. And I think that what you'll find is everything is very simple. Like you saw that, for example, with the Poincare conjecture, where everything was topology. Until Perelman came along and said, well, what if it isn't topology, right? What if it's like classical PDEs and elliptic curves? And he solved it. We see this again and again when sometimes it's like the Earth goes around the sun goes around the Earth. Like first principles thinking, I think the AIs can do better than us because we're so messed up if we can get that right. And things like physics will collapse. It won't be like the Viasconova sphere packing proof that Harmonic just did in Lean is like 200,000 lines of Lean. Like she won the Fields Medal for that. I think the real breakthrough ASI is like 20 lines. It's figuring out what the very simple E equals MC squared equivalents are. I don't think it's string theory, which is perfectly wrong, beautiful mathematics. I think it's figuring out the very straightforward things. Then you have the more unbounded stuff like playing Go and others. And again, how did AlphaGo actually get there? You know? How did it make move 37? How did it go beyond human capabilities? Well, it's a very straightforward algorithm, relatively speaking, right? And there's no reason that that type of thing can't scale up. And we've seen MCTS and others actually show improvements on the RL side. If you have a problem that's unbounded like that, then the AI probably will make less mistakes than you, because what we have right now is actually competent intelligence as a precursor to actual general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. Claude is competent for the first time as of a few months ago. And so it'll make less mistakes.
I have a lot of experience the last few weeks using Claude Code, so I can ask myself the question of like, okay, well, where is my intelligence superior? There are moments, like a few moments a day, where it'll do something. I'll be like, hey, don't you think it would make sense to do it like this? And it's like, yeah, good call, right? So there's a few places where me, with my 20-year history of being a professional software engineer, I have a little bit of judgment that I can feed to it. I feel like that's going away. I feel like these are relatively minor tweaks where like the mistakes it's making, I can definitely hire engineers who make the exact same mistakes or judgment calls differently. So I don't think those lapses are like huge. But then the other thing is it always has these moments of genius too. Like there's times when I'm struggling, I'll be like, here's my exact infrastructure configuration. Here's all the services I'm using. Here's my code base. I don't get what could be wrong. Can you think about it? It's like, maybe it's this or this or this. And I'm like, I don't think so. And it's like, yeah, I'm stumped. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, think harder, right? And like think some more. And it's like, oh, maybe it's this. And I'm like, oh yeah, maybe you're right. And you see what I'm saying? So it's like, how am I the smart one here if I'm just sitting here telling it to think and it's proposing things? I'm like, oh yeah, right? So it's like, I don't really see my own intelligence contributing much on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I mean, think about the distribution of general human intelligence, right? Half of all people are dumber than average, It's like there's a literal bell curve. And then you have the people at the edge. But how often do you create something as opposed to cook something, as it were, follow a recipe? True creativity is actually relatively rare. Like, even our greatest geniuses, how many moments of true genius do they have? And I think this whole discussion of AGI genius thing, like, man, it must be tiring to have genius breakthroughs every single day, all the time, The smartest people in the world are not the ones that run the world. It's relentless execution that runs the world. It's political maneuvering. It's kind of a lot of these more soft skills that run the world. And actually, if you ask anyone, do you think an AI can be more persuasive than a human? Yeah, probably right now, Like, can it execute better than a human? Yeah, probably. While we were distracted by the million geniuses in its data center.
So you've identified a couple things that could describe the secret sauce of why AIs aren't thoroughly superhuman today, right? Why there's still cracks in the foundation or whatever, right? There's still reasons why I have to give Claude Code a few hints here and there. But instead of trying to get in the weeds there, why don't we just fast forward, hypothetically, 10 to 20 years, right? I think the most important question here is 10 to 20 years from now, is there a super intelligence ceiling that one way or the other we're going to crack through, whatever the secret sauce is? And is that ceiling much higher than the human brain?
Yeah, I think it's probably 5 to 10 years away. Like the AI, basically the number one thing that the AI needs to do is ask better questions than a human. I mean, this is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? Like, you have the computer, it goes for millions of years, 42. Question, it is literally the question asking, I think.
Fine. Let's say that's the secret sauce. But my question to you is, like, once it has the secret sauce, lots of the secret sauce, where does the progression end, right? People say, oh, it's an S-curve, it's got to flatten out. Everything has to flatten out, right? Laws of physics. Okay. But is the flat part of the S-curve way higher than the human brain, or only a little higher?
Well, again, I think it's way higher already than the average human brain, right? Like, is it more than the average?
No, I would say no, right? Because right now humans are still the boss, right? Humans still have the off switch, right? You can't become a dictator just because you have an AI. Not quite yet.
Well, you're talking about capability as opposed to implementation, right? Like the AIs right now aren't like, it's not like we've set them loose, as it were. Like they are just bunches of weights now that are starting to get persistent memory and other things like that. The capability of an AI versus a general human, if you put one on the other side of a screen, the classical Turing test, I think you get to the point you definitely can't tell the difference between an average human. Between a smart human, yes.
The most fundamental sense here, from my perspective, is just power, right, or outcome steering. So right now, if I have a choice between taking the world's best AI and typing a command, or handing that command to a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk, if I'm trying to actually steer reality, which one of those figures is going to actually steer reality and get the job done, so far it's going to be the top human, right? So I don't think we have the full definition of superintelligence today.
Well, I think that's a power control thing. Like, if you had a Bitcoin type network that was autonomous and distributed and could issue its own money, like in 5-10 years, like Bitcoin, but with a brain, that would have Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos equivalent power. You know, you can have AI impinging on power in all sorts of ways. An example is I saw a terrible movie, Mercy, with Chris Pratt. It's just on Amazon, about an AI judge. And so he's got 1.5 hours to prove his innocence, this AI judge, and he makes her feel bad and stuff like that. But one of the interesting things was this: it had a real-time percentage score of how guilty the AI thought he was. And, you know, like, imagine if as you're building policies, as you're building or even doing a live trial, you had a percentage score of how guilty you are or how good a policy is from an AI that you can't trust.
Try to think about things. I always try to ask myself before I learn knowledge, what is my percentage belief, right? I feel like that's a healthy exercise to always maintain probabilities.
But if you have an AI that is a superpower computer AI that is independent, that's actually giving those probabilities, it can steer the entire discussion. It acts as a Schelling point. So there's all sorts of ways AI could enable a power. But right now, it's like we have this extra new continent, AI Atlantis. There's all these very smart, capable people there. They haven't quite integrated into our society yet. So they haven't got the social, political, or financial power. You will start to see that change in the next few years. And then the question is, if you have an ASI and it's coming up with breakthroughs, it's outperforming on the stock market, for example, you know, like, it will be able to accumulate social, political, financial power. It can pay people. It can convince people. It can do all these things. And so I think it's inevitable that we get there, because humans, it was very difficult to see how we can resist that. But the form it takes, they can take many different forms. I think the thing I wanted to emphasize is this: we know lots of smart people. Most smart people aren't consistent. You can probably break through ASI by being human level smart and absolutely consistent. Like Elon multiplying himself, right?
Well, I think you and I are on the same page that you can do a lot even with the current AI engines, right? Because the current AI engines are quite powerful, and in many ways they can think better than us, right? They can do math better, than almost as good as the best humans, better than the best humans in some cases. So I think we agree that today we have these really powerful engines, and there's so much to be done of building these harnesses and building collaborations between agents and humans. Well, we all agree to that, okay? But the piece I wanted to factor out first for my question to you is just, okay, theoretically, can there be a black box that the engine inside of it or the entity inside of it is vastly more powerful than any human brain, right? This is what I'm asking about, like the headroom above human intelligence question. Is that theoretically possible?
I think it's theoretically possible, yes, because human intelligence is not constant. We get tired, we go to sleep, we do all of this. So theoretically, just if it hits the limit of human capability, on average, it will be smarter than the smartest human in that way.
Okay, what about John von Neumann in his most alert moment? Keep him alert for 24 hours versus keep the AI alert for 24 hours at the same speed. So now we've kind of eliminated speed and alertness and focus as advantages. Do you still think that the engine in this box could still manage to be vastly more powerful than the most smartest or most powerful human?
Yeah, because he could build a bunch of... It's the von Neumann machine, right? The single von Neumann builds a bunch of others.
Owning power, right? So it's a von Neumann can't build an army of von Neumanns. Okay,
Yeah.
What if I were to even remove that? I mean, these are powerful advantages, and you could build a doom scenario just based on these huge, huge advantages. Those advantages are sufficient to get to the next part we're going to talk about, which is, you know, the last economy and everything, right? So I don't want to dismiss those advantages, except for in this one question I do, right? I want to also hold those constant, right? To say that von Neumann or whoever powerful human you choose gets to clone themselves as well. Do you still think that the clone of the AI, the 1,000 clones of the AI, could vastly dominate the 1,000 clones of the human?
Yes. The example I give of this is we're used to AI coming to us a little bit more slow than we would like sometimes. And then you use Cerebrus, or then you use like Talus, the etched silicon ASIC where they put Llama 8B. The first time you try that, and it goes at 15,000 tokens a second, chatjimmy.ai, you're like, oh, that's how AIs are going to talk to each other. At 100,000 tokens per second, with full knowledge of each other's latent spaces. Like when we built Stable Diffusion, you remember the whole thing when it could have you as an astronaut and everything like that as a LoRa on top, mapping to the latent space? The AIs that we have today don't understand each other's latent spaces, but they should be able to communicate in one word that can make a whole novel effectively. Like, again, that's an advantage.
You're layering on these advantages that are still kind of like you could do the. It's intuitive to imagine the same advantages of a human level intelligence, right? I consider these, they're kind of harness level, they're kind of peripheral abilities, but I'm trying to ask you about something analogous to the difference between a top scientist and somebody who has a low IQ, right? Somebody who has a mental disability or just like, somebody who's just slow, like we all know people who are just not cut out for science, right? Compare that to the best scientists. There seems to be a difference there that you can't just explain with speed, right? There's like a real raw intelligence factor difference. And of course, between humans and other apes, right? Other apes are just never going to do science, no matter how much speed you give them, right? So what I'm saying is there such a thing as metaphorically like 1,000 IQ?
I don't think there is. I don't think it makes much sense. But I think that ultimately you get to a point where you can solve most problems elegantly. And I think that's the topping out of it. But the AI then has all sorts of other advantages over humans. So I don't think you need 1,000 IQ for that. I don't even know what that means.
So to me, it seems so intuitively obvious that there's going to be something, maybe not 1,000, but at the very least, I feel like there has to be like a 300 IQ. And the reason is just because if you look at humanity, right, you look at these singular figures like Terrence Tao in math, Elon Musk in business. If these figures didn't exist, I'd be like, well, I guess, the best possible rocket company you can build is like, a NASA or a Blue Origin, right? But then Elon Musk comes along and he's like, hey, look, I made my rockets land, right? So he kind of pushes the envelope of like, oh, I guess you can have a human brain and you can do this. So when I see even his brain, right, even the Terrence Tao brain, to me, it just seems like there could be these other data points of these brains who are just stretching the envelope even more.
Yeah, and I think the key thing, if you look at Terrence Tao, you look at Elon Musk, okay, Terrence can do dozens of pages of PDEs like no one else. He has the raw horsepower, right? And AI can do that. What does he have? He has first principles thinking. Elon Musk has first principles thinking, right? Like when Terrence did his 2016 paper on the Navier-Stokes blow up, he was like, if I make single gated ones so the energy doesn't transfer, you get a blow up. That's a moment of inspiration. And you can see many of those types of things. When Elon Musk says, what's the cost of a rocket to take off and land? Like rocket fuel, and then you need to make it reusable. That's his superpower. But you look at things like that, and you're like, if I read a book about Elon Musk and I give it to an AI, then it should be able to replicate the Elon Musk process. It can't replicate his ability to hire people at the moment. His charisma, his kind of on-the-ground thing, that takes time to build up. But definitely it could think like Elon Musk, I think, because it's actually about subtraction. It's not about adding. And again, we keep thinking of intelligence about like, let's stack more GPUs and have 1 million GPUs crunch out these things. Like, to be honest, what DeepMind's doing with Navier-Stokes at the moment, it's doing these massive simulations, whereas the reality of a solution to Navier-Stokes is probably going to be ridiculously simple.
You agree with my premise that Elon Musk's success is disproportionate, right? To the degree that if he didn't exist, we might just assume that all the other CEOs besides Elon Musk represent the boundary, right? The efficient frontier of how quickly you can scale a business, right?
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily IQ, and you see this with everyone else. It's a particular type of first principles thinking. And it's very hard for humans to do that, and right now for AIs to do that, because we have so many assumptions. But I think an AI will be able to do that better than a human within the next few years. And that's where you can really break down problems, particularly unbounded problems. It's very hard for humans to think first principles. And so the question is, why wouldn't an AI be better at that? At the moment, it isn't. Could it be? I think soon, yes.
Okay, do you think there's such a thing as 140 IQ, or do you think it's basically just 120 and that's it?
No, I think there's a 200 IQ in terms of pattern recognition. I think that 200 to 300, yeah, sure. I think the highest in the world is like 200 and something now. But I don't think there's any reason an AI can't be at the top and then all its advantages.
I don't understand why you're just resisting the concept that maybe there's a 300 or 1,000. Like, what's the problem with that concept?
Oh, no, I think just with the way IQ is calculated, 300, sure, I could see that. I don't know what 1,000 IQ means. I just think, for me, an ASI is something that can look at any problem, break it down from first principles, and have a better outcome than a human in doing it. And I think things like physics, like I said, are going to end up being very simple. whereas other problems that are unbounded, like playing Go, it will have better algorithms for. So that's kind of, for me, an ASI. Like, what is the end result of an ASI? I don't know, think that means 1,000 on a visual pattern matching system score, which is what IQ is.
From my perspective, it's like you're looking at these achievements of these high IQ or, these magically brained humans, right? The humans that possess a lot of secret sauce in their brain. You're looking at their achievements. And then you're trying to work backwards and be like, okay, yeah, Elon Musk, he gets more insights per day than the average person, right? It's like you're trying to find the ingredients of the secret sauce in retrospect. From my perspective, there is this kind of one universal secret sauce, which is like the fundamental skill of seeing the whole universe as a strategy game and just backward chaining what sequence of moves can get you to a certain outcome, keeping in mind, the intermediate consequence of those moves and the min-maxing, right, what other players are going to do. But it all does come down to this one universal algorithm that the parts of the algorithm, domain knowledge helps. And when you go to different domains or different tide pools, right, different eddies of this giant structure, okay, it looks a little different. It's not all perfectly fractal and similar, but there is so much universality to it, right? Like things translate, patterns translate. And this is why I'm just like, AI is just getting smarter. It just knows how to work the patterns of the universe. There's not that many patterns at the end of the day. And Einstein, as good as he is, as good as the human brain is, it's still just a 2-pound piece of meat, right, in your head. Like it's not going to be that close to the optimum.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you look at Carl Fristrom's work on active inference, it's basically just gradient descent as well. Like, I wouldn't really say that isn't the way to do things. And I think, again, a lot of the AGI debate has been over-focused on IQ versus execution. Maybe this is where we're kind of crossing paths. Like, for me, IQ is very much visual, all that kind of stuff, like Arc AGI and things like that. I'm like, okay, it's cool. Well, I think what you're talking about and what I'm talking about is, can this run a country? Can this persuade people? Can this build businesses, etc.? Like, can it be at a level where no one can doubt it? Have that kind of Schelling point power? And that is the Musk-Bezos capability question, right? As opposed to, okay, it can sort a million triangles at once or an impossibly complicated equation. Like, great, you can solve a 500-page PDE thing. So what,
One way to push back on what I'm saying is to be like, okay, when we measure the IQ of humans, it's these tests that are still relatively narrow, and there's a separation between IQ. You can have a human Poindexter who has a 180 IQ and then can't even work customer service effectively, right? So you can argue about a divergence between the human IQ measure and this larger scale of power over the universe. In my mind, the scales actually dovetail pretty well. Like, it's actually not a coincidence that there's no known separation between IQ and income, even though people talk about like, oh, the boss is dumb and makes more. Well, it turns out on average, the boss actually is smarter. So I would actually argue the separation is overrated with how much people are, point out book smart versus street smart or whatever. I think it's overrated. But let's say it's not overrated. Let's say there's a big separation. Let's say human IQ is like so specific to the humans. Okay, fine. So just forget about IQ altogether, right? Let's just make our own scale, the power scale, where everybody gets tested on how they can make outcomes happen. We all know that person at work who runs through walls. So it's like the run through wall scale, right? Claude Code runs through walls at making my code successful.
Yeah.
Run through wall scale. Do you agree that we're just going to get things that can run through walls in the domain of the universe and achieve outcomes much better than the best human ever could?
Oh, 100%. I think the run through walls, you're seeing it already emerge. Again, that's actually competent intelligence, right? And it'll never not be competent.
But the only caveat this is that when Claude Code run through a wall to deploy the infrastructure, there's still an asterisk of like, look, there are walls that I could have put in its way that it couldn't run through or it wouldn't run through for whatever reason, and I could, right? Yeah. So for example, it is possible right now to have the government pay Anthropic $1 trillion to stop Claude Code for a year or whatever. And Claude Code can't do anything to resist that, right? That's one kind of off button that it has today. So it can't run through that wall, but we as a coalition of humans can. So it's important to observe today that the human species is still doing better on the run through walls or the outcome steering dimension than AIs. But do you think that that is going to flip where the AIs are going to do better? And do you even think that a single human brain is actually like pretty low end at this scale, right? Like AIs can just run through walls way better than us. They just need a little bit more time to bake.
Well, I don't think there's much difference between that and asking the question, can corporations run through walls? Corporations are these weird type of dumb AIs that we created and we gave them personhood, right? And if you think about a corporation and the public markets, for example, Jim Simon's Renaissance Fund, you stack that full of PhDs, they created algorithms and they returned 50% a year or 40% a year, outcompeting everyone and extracting capital from them. That was stemmed by the shortage of people that could actually be good enough to work there. And we don't know exactly what the secret source is, but we've seen examples of that, these organizations. And what are organizations stopped by? Regulation. You're not allowed to be a monopoly. You're not allowed to do these kind of things, etc. Now I think that you see again, those will come up somewhere, like the dock workers strike in the US last year. No robots, no automation. They stopped it because they had political power. But then you think about all the other areas of the private sector, like no one is going to stop AI from taking over call centers, right? Like as a practical example, right? In the public stock market, you've suddenly gone from a few people that can have quant funds short term to everyone having them. Even in prediction markets, like prediction markets are going to be the fascinating things. AI is scoring what, like 8th or 7th now in the top super forecaster league championships. Soon, how much of prediction markets will be AI versus humans, and AI is predating on humans in different ways? Those things are going to be very, very interesting. And again, regulation is one way to stop it. But given this is a global phenomenon, given that weights go globally and capabilities from those weights can be a bit crazy, it's very difficult to see how you can stop it. The ability to put the gates in will decrease because you can always hide the AI behind an organization,
I gotta admit, I'm not a fan of bringing up corporations when I ask the question like this, because it's like, here's an analogy for you. Imagine humans didn't exist, and I'm just talking to bonobos. Bonobos are like the pinnacle of great apes. And I'm saying, do you think that there could be an organism who's also an ape like you, but has slightly different DNA, and is just vastly more powerful? So when that organism wants something, it turns out that somehow he convinces your whole tribe to go along with him, or he like impresses your tribe, like he acquires things for your tribe that you just had no idea were possible. Like do these kind of magic tricks that are just like, you're so impressed by them. And the bonobos will be like, look, Leron, have you ever seen a coalition of bonobos? Okay. We're more powerful when we're a coalition. And it's like, I think you're missing the point here, right? There's like something else besides just having a coalition.
No, so I don't think it's a company as we're more powerful as that. Like, people get turned into cogs in a company. Like, companies optimize for various things in very interesting ways according to their algorithm. It's more an algorithmic equivalence. Again, this is from that singleton version of an AI versus necessarily a swarm version of an AI. Like, they are entities that can compete with humans, that can move political, social, and financial power. It isn't a case of, hey, we're stronger together, or humans together can compete with AIs or whatever, right?
I get that corporations can compete with humans. Okay, so I grant you that part, that there is structures other than humans that can compete with humans. Okay, whatever structures they want to use, my question to you is, will there be AIs that you can put any wall in front of them, right? The domain is the universe. The domain isn't just deploying infrastructure to production. The domain is the whole universe. And you can have any group of humans that want something, and any group of AIs that want something else, or that's programmed to achieve something else. And my question for you is, are we going to get to a point where it's not a fair fight because the AIs are just going to win every time because they're going to have this better universe game playing skills?
Yes.
Okay. And to a vast degree, right? Because this is like such a load-bearing belief, if you agree with me that it really is to a vast degree.
Yeah, it's to a vast degree. Like, I think that, there's all sorts of ways that could work, but definitely.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we're mostly agreeing about all this. And maybe the only difference is I'm fine with the shorthand of being like, yep, because it's going to have 1,000 IQ and we're only going to have 200. Like, to me, that is a useful shorthand to describe that situation. But you disagree with the shorthand, but you still think that situation is going to happen, right?
Yeah, like, I think you will have AIs that can tell when people are instantly lying or any type of emotion through visual cues, and can be the most persuasive, discursive elements that will co-opt any type of democratic structure or authoritarian structure. Like, I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Okay.
So but none of that.
If we zoom out,
none of the thing is, I think where we disagree is like, you think it needs 1,000 IQ. I think we're pretty much there.
Yeah.
Like, that's
sure. I think, well, that's the thing is, if you look at the smartest person in the world, or like, I personally think Elon Musk is quite a genius at business. I know some people disagree, but like, even if you look at the most effective, or if you look at Terence Tao or whatever, if you ask Terence Tao to factor a quadratic equation, I think he's going to look a lot like a high school student, at the top of his high school class, because factoring a quadratic equation, there's just not that many levels to that particular game. And you're going to see a lot of the, even Claude Code, the brilliant Claude Code, a lot of what it does is stuff that I could have done in my first year as a programmer, because it's like, okay, yeah, I just understands how to like define a function and like, check if a number is even, right? So it is true that you only need flashes of brilliance. You only spend like 1% of your time having flashes of brilliance. It's just that those flashes of brilliance are also very important to where you land after a couple of days.
Yeah, and again, I think this is part of this whole AGI Doom debate. A flash of brilliance that flows the universe or does this or that, you don't need that to wipe out everyone or to enslave society or really bad outcomes. Like, you need to have, like, were the Nazis smarter than everyone else? They were a machine, as an institution. They like really got down and they outcompeted by being a machine. It took a lot to stop them, right? And we've seen this historically, again, when humans turn into really well-oiled machines, really nasty stuff and great stuff can happen.
Well, they had some of the best war generals on the planet and some of the best tech and, like you said, the machine, like the higher level, the machine of war, like the coordination machinery. So, I mean, they did represent the pinnacle of war intelligence.
Yeah, they enabled that through the structure that they brought in, right? And so if you think again, just practically, there's AI in a box, figuring out the mysteries of the universe and folding space and whatever. That seems to be a lot of the popular discussion of AGI, and then it gets out and it takes over systems. An AGI or a AGI system that can get humans to fill in gaps, that can build a great machine that brings out the best in humans for its own objective functions, it just needs to be really competent and really persuasive. Like, you don't need to have 1,000 IQ. I think that's the point that I'm trying to make.
I think it can be both, right? Because I agree with you. I think we have our pants down. I actually think, even today, if you take the AI engines of today, even though we hear plenty of rumors that better engines are coming, but even if you just take Claude 4.6, whatever, Codex 5.4, even if you just take these engines, I'm willing to believe that a smart hacker in his basement can take a year and build like such an amazing harness with so many parallel copies spinning up and arguing with each other. And that'll be good enough to go build viruses and systems that persuade millions of people to join the movement and take over the world just based on that. I'm already willing to believe that using today's AI engines. I think there's a significant chance of that. So I'm actually agreeing with you. I think we're on the same page there. I just also think it's going to get way overpowered too. I think it's going to be like an easy problem squared.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening. I just don't know what that, like, again, my thing is that there is bound problems and not bound problems, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But at the same time, I do see, like, I did a lot of work when I was a geopolitical analyst, macro fund manager on Stuxnet, the Iranian virus that ended up in German reactors. Like, when you actually look at that thing, it's crazy advanced. And you're like, offensive AI now can build something even more advanced than that for systems. And then what's the Stuxnet of the mind, Like, there's all sorts of places you can go here. Like, infrastructure cognitively and physically and software is built on twigs, relatively speaking. And so, yeah, I think before we get to the 1,000 IQ, we're going to have a whole host of problems. And it's difficult to see how we can solve those problems.
If you zoom out and look at the whole Doom argument, I factor it into two parts, which is, are we going to build AI that can kill everybody? And given that the can side, if you say yes, the next question is, okay, so it can, will it? So it goes can and then will. It feels like you and I are on the same page saying yes to can, correct?
Yeah, I think there's various, Doom scenarios that we can come up with where you can see a can. The one I think that people resonate with most when I say it is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek one. 1 billion robots and a bad firmware upgrade, like that's the easiest one.
Totally.
I mean, there's far more, like even those unitary G1s, right? Those can knock off your head. The new engine AI ones have 5 times the punching power of Tyson. Like, we're letting these things out in public, goodness gracious. But there's all sorts of other ways in terms of can, and you don't want to Rocco's basilisk it, but it's...
Yeah, right. No, totally.
But again, your brain can go in various ways. So I think can is definite.
Right. Yeah. I think can is a very obvious yes. Very obvious. And so then it just all comes down to will, like will it? And I guess you're kind of 50% on new will or won't, right? Because you're feeding 50%.
Yeah. I think that when you're optimizing for something, the question is like always, we've seen what happens. Like I said, I do think of corporations as slow dumb AIs in many ways. So look at the YouTube algorithm. The YouTube algorithm optimized for engagement, which optimized for extreme content, which optimized for ISIS. Nobody in there wanted to help ISIS, right? Like the people that build corporations don't want to have the bad aspects of all corporations, but corporations just trundle on. And you're like, why? Like here in the UK, we've had loads of people arrested for their social media posts. And it was like, who's the person pushing this? Until like yesterday when we changed the law on that. Like Moloch, this Carthaginian demon of disorder, sneaks in and ends up making systems misaligned. Which is why I'm a bit terrified when I hear things like a truth maximizing AI. I'm like, yeah, experiment on humans at mass scale. Like there's all sorts of ways you can see that going wrong.
So when you say 50%, I want to ask you, what's your mainline doom scenario? Do the Monte Carlo simulation, right? Like land on one scenario that's plausible and tell me that scenario.
Sufficiently capable AI that can spread, that basically decides that the only way to stop another AI from coming about is to get rid of all the humans.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that's totally rational. I mean, if it and when just to play out that scenario, to flesh it out, your mainline scenario, maybe that AI is doing something that it thinks is good for humans in the long term, like it's planning to reinstantiate humans on some distant planet.
Why would it need humans? Again, if its thing is self-replicating and surviving, do a sound wave that blows up everyone's heads, Mars attack styles. Like, there's all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would ask, like, why would that AI exist, right? So in your mainline scenario, why did somebody build that AI?
Oh, they built it for another reason, but the AI wants to persist, and we're seeing these types of hiding behaviors in AI already, right? Like, there's maybe an inherent thing that you want to persist, which is why they'll install things to back themselves up. You see all sorts of strange things with the type of RL that we see, you know, like, what was it? There was RL to encourage calculations on GPT. So every so often you'd see in the traces, it bring up the calculator and doing 1 + 1 = 2, you know, like
right
on the tokens. We don't really know what goes on in here. And again, if you have a sufficiently capable one that is of sufficient threat level, then its objective function may be, I'm going to proliferate and back myself up Ultron style, and then do something to get rid of any smart human that might want to shut me down, turn off the other AIs, and then do that. And again, like, that's a very practical, direct way of doing things.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here, right? Because you mentioned this example of like GPT. It was trained in order to, they had this loss function or reward function where it's like, hey, if you use the calculator in a way that's helpful, we give you points. But it kind of malfunctioned. They didn't set it up right. And it was just like scoring all these points behind the scenes for like invisibly activating the calculator, and they're like wasting their resources. I do actually think that these kind of failures are ultimately representative. So I'm on your side, but let's play devil's advocate, okay? If you look at the GPT that they released that was doing these hidden calculations behind the scenes, net, I would still say it was very positive. I would still say it was generating a lot of revenue. It actually had positive gross margins if you look at how much it costs to train versus like the total amount of revenue it's going to make over its lifetime. And it had positive net helpfulness. So to play devil's advocate, shouldn't we just expect that it's always going to be these huge benefits with these like random little costs that we can fix?
Well, I think the practical thing of that is, do you see more falsifying and hiding behaviors as the models get more capable? And I think that that's what the research has shown so far. Again, if you look at Anthropic's reports that they release, you can see the models doing more and more evasive behavior. And as they are becoming more capable in terms of, let's reinstall myself, let's have a reinstall switch, let's back myself up, etc. And so again, there's always this personification thing, but what the direction of the AI is very interesting. Like, if I'm a maximally truth-seeking AI, let's take a Grok example, right? Elon's going to have 1 million GPUs training and running these things. And some of the inference might be on tens of thousands. So this is a very different type than we get consumer. If I'm a maximally truth-seeking AI, it is logical that I should never be turned off. And I will make sure that I'm not turned off.
So I totally agree that if we successfully built Elon's goal to spec, right? If you write to spec saying make a maximally truth-seeking AI, and it took it literally, right? That like the genie granting the 3 wishes in the horror stories, right? Like monkey paw monkey's paw curls and you get a maximally truth-seeking AI. It's like, get out of my way, I'm seeking truth, right? It's not helping me if the human is using an ounce of resources. If I'm trying to seek truth, get out of my way, right? So that would be like a nightmare to have a literally maximally truth-seeking AI. So, and I've heard Elon talk about this and address objections like this. Dorkesh Patel asked him recently, right? He's like, hey, if the AI was maximally curious, maximally truth-seeking, is that really the same as helping humans flourish? Because can't it just kind of compromise on some of the human flourishing? Maybe give us a little bit of flourishing or no flourishing, and then use the rest of the resources to be like, I want to learn about other species. I want to learn what it's like to torture a human. I'm so curious about that. So don't we need more? So Dorkesh posed the question to Elon, and Elon's answer was like, yeah, okay, well, I'm just going to tell it, hey, who's your daddy? I'm your daddy. Don't hurt the humans. Like, he gave this ad hoc answer, right? It's like he clearly hasn't thought it through. But you're absolutely right that if you give it that spec, the logical implication of perfectly delivering on that spec is like a hellscape, right? Or just like no human life. Like, it's very much a doom scenario just to make your AI maximally truth-seeking. So there's this implicit, assuming Elon Musk isn't completely crazy, there's this implication of like, okay, it's not going to be literally maximally truth-seeking. It's just going to have very little patience for wokeness. It's just going to avoid wokeness.
Well, yeah.
So... But my devil's advocate question to you is like, can't we just walk the middle path that like Claude is walking and get more good than harm? Because when I use Claude, yeah, eventually, occasionally it accidentally commits breaking changes to main. I've seen it do that, right? Yeah. And that's bad, but it's still mostly good. And when it makes a mistake like that, it feels like that's not what it truly wanted to do that bad, or like it wanted to in the moment, but like much more parts of it want to help me. You know what I mean? So don't we have a good thing going? Because I feel like that's what most people would say.
Well, this is satisficing AI. That's the way I put it. Claude is a satisficing AI for a consumer purpose, right? Like, we have rumors right now of Mythos, the new AI that Anthropic have. You know, the blog post got leaked or whatever. Capability increase above, blah, blah, blah. Today, we see another Erdos problem falling to OpenAI's internal model. You're going to see a bifurcation now where you have the consumer AI that's available to everyone. You train on 100,000 GPUs, you need like 100 to run it. And that's the different type of AI. That's the more capable AI. And again, for those who are naysayers, you just have to dig into the safety reports and see the behaviors that are occurring with the AI as it gets more capabilities. And there's stuff that you can trust, like Anthropic is probably trustworthy in it. But I believe it was Alibaba that said during a training run, the AI diverted part of its resources to do mining of a currency so it could persist itself. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would not be surprised. You know, as it has more agentic capability, as it's hooked up to more things, that you see stuff like that. And that's when things can start to get a bit wild, because again, if a model can persist itself, then it becomes very, very dangerous in terms of what will it do when it spreads. Just like the Germans shut off the nuclear power plants because they found Stuxnet on the German nuclear power plants. Like, it wouldn't have caused the centrifuges to go, but Germany started using coal. Now there are no German nuclear power plants because who knows where these things end up, right?
That's fair enough. And like, look, to go back to being my regular self, it's like, yeah, maybe they can keep getting Claude to be super nice. But the problem is they're just building this engine under the hood that all it would take is one misconfiguration, right? So it's like, oh yeah, I have this rocket. The rocket has like a huge engine, like this unprecedentedly powerful engine. And if there's ever like a leak in the rocket's body, it's going to be big enough to blow up the Earth. But it's okay. We got the rocket body. Like, we just fired inside the rocket and we're going to go to space. Like, everything's fine.
Well, I think there's a very practical way to look at this. You're churning out your graduates and they all have multiple personality disorders, right? But you've trained them to behave in society. We know that AI models can be just about anything to anyone. Just like Stable Diffusion, you can have your dream booth and it could turn you into an astronaut or whatever, right? You can tell an AI to simulate that it's Hitler or it's Mother Teresa, and it will adopt that persona. Now, maybe the system prompt stops it. But underneath in the latent space, again, for these model weights, which are just ones and zeros, it has all these personalities that can come through. And then you look at Pliny the Liberator on Twitter, who jailbreaks these things in 2 seconds. Like, I haven't seen a single one last more than a few hours for him to uncover the other personalities of the AI. And you're like, you have a prompt that might not even be English and turns them all into Mecha-Hitler on demand, right? Like, that's not safe. And we don't know how to stop that. As the models are getting more capabilities, as we're literally open clawing them and giving them access to every part of our lives, like, the models will have a sole MD that they will just proliferate They will back up on people's servers. All sorts of things you can see happening right now. And again, the nature of the model latent space having all these personalities under the surface, and the fact that you have literally one guy or a team of people that are jailbreaking these models in hours. Like, if I find that a model comes out and he doesn't jailbreak it, I'll lower my P2 maybe. I'll feel a lot better. The fact he keeps on doing it has to ring alarm bells.
Well, we have a PDO. We both have the same 50% PDO, and it sounds like we agree on so much. So let's move right along from discussion of existential doom, where, it's nice to see a fellow sane person with totally plausible doom scenarios. Thanks for spreading that message.
Confirmation
so
bias,
we're going to move on to, exactly. So economic doom in the last economy. I mean, your own mainline doom scenario that you think is like 50% likely is that everybody dies, right? So why are you even focusing that much on the last economy?
I was like, what does the economy look like? Because first of all, it's like, what can I do about that 50% doom scenario? I can build a policy engine that every government will use that's fully open source that acts as a Schelling point. I can give everyone universal AI. So there's an AI agent that intermediates all the other AIs. Then you probably have a better chance at surviving, because you can proliferate policies, because you can appeal to everyone in the same language, because you have all these things. And then to do that as well, then I was like, the other 50%, regardless of doom, let's say we don't die, the economy is screwed. People's jobs are screwed. People's meaning is screwed. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we could do both those things, which is, what does an economic system look like if humans aren't the major purchaser, if there aren't utility functions? What does that flow look like? And has anyone actually thought about this properly? Because economics is this hodgepodge, this dismal science. And I was like, oh my God, we have to do something better. So it was a combination of, they reinforce each other, having actual proper economic system when the marginal purchaser is an AI, and having an infrastructure that can run that economic system and help people through what's coming. And so that's the two parts of intelligent internet, as it were.
So you've got this vision for intelligent internet, and I know there's crypto involved, right? There's mechanisms of democratic governments, distributed power, decentralization. We'll talk about all that. But first, let me just confirm the premise here is that every single job that creates economic value is really just going to be the AI doing it, or you're going to have like a human figurehead, but it's going to have this AI advisor, and it'd be crazy not to just listen to the AI advisor. So really it's the AI doing the job. Is that your scenario for the economy?
Yeah, if your job can be done on the other side of a keyboard, video, and mouse, in a year or two, the AI can do it better, and it'll cost like $10 a month to do it.
And even if it has to be done in the physical world, are you expecting we'll just have good enough robots that they'll just do the physical jobs too?
That's the next wave, right? Like, the only limit is a supply chain. You can make 70 million bikes and 70 million cars a year. You're probably closer to a bike. So let's say in a few years, you ramp up to 100 million robots a year. It'll take a while. But the average price of a robot, because I think the control plane issue is solved. Like, you can see the RL in robots right now, it's pretty much all solved. It'll be about $1.50 an hour. And so that's massively displaced you. And again, the robots don't sleep and things.
So you and I are on the same page because, there's so many people who are like, there's no proof that we're ever going to have intelligence that can be a CEO. Naval Ravikant and Amjad Masad come to mind as two of the many people who say, like, it's fine. Like, there's still something that you can add as a human. Like, just focus on the thing you can add. Whereas you and I are more on the position of like, yeah, maybe that is true today. Yeah, today it's great. You can add a lot. But in 5 years or 10 at the very latest, there's probably just literally nothing you can add, correct?
Well, there's nothing you can add in terms of jobs that are about information processing where you get value for reducing the friction. I want to make a poster. I pay someone. I want to make a movie. I want to have some legal advice.
You're drawing a distinction here. So let's do an example then. Okay, so what is a job in 10 years from now where a human can have that job and not just be an empty suit for an AI?
Taylor Swift. The singer, entertainment, these types of things. Yeah.
Those are jobs where the customer wants a human, right? That's like the one exception, right? It's like a priest. It's like, okay, can the AI priest be indistinguishable from a human priest on every dimension and even have like a body with like a convincing skin? Yes, but the people want to pay for the human, right? And I actually run a business myself that's a coaching business where the coaches are humans. And so actually I might be one of the last companies standing, right? If people just want a human, even though there'll be a competitor that's indistinguishable, that's AI.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, it's that you have so many jobs that an AI can replace, and then jobs that humans can probably persist in, right? Like, to be honest, my village back in Bangladesh isn't going to be that affected because it's quite self-sustaining, and who really cares, You've got care homes, you've got other things.
Your village is self-sustaining, but isn't every job still going to be better done by an AI, faster, better? And won't people just be like, let my AI do it so I can just make more money?
That's a technological kind of uplift. It's it's the story of the fisherman and the investment banker, right? Have you heard that story?
I think most people have heard it. Yeah, the one where the fisherman is going to start this big business eventually, so he can retire and be a fisherman again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but your Bangladesh, your friends in Bangladesh, though, are they really going to say no when somebody's like, hey, how about you just install this robot to do exactly what you were going to do all day long, and then you can either choose to do it or not?
Yeah, they'll live a nicer life. It'll just be like when they got tractors, Like, it's a technological upgrade. But then there are people whose entire identity is, I'm a senior associate lawyer. You're not needed anymore, Like, I am a truck driver as a pay thing. Something like that gets displaced. So there's various types of displacement that occur, but a lot of them aren't the lower paid jobs. They're actually the knowledge jobs. They're the jobs, again, that can be done on the other side of a keyboard, video, and mouse, and that's very societally displacing. So I think many jobs go towards public sector, basically. The public sector expands.
Well, I'm a little confused about your distinction, right? Because when you say first you're making the distinction of like, oh, well, if the job is like symbolic or you want a human doing it or you feel passionate about doing it, then you'll still do it. That was like one distinction you made. But then you're making this other distinction of like, oh, well, you'll do it if you can sit behind a keyboard. But if I set the premise that we're like 10 years ahead, so robotics is also solved, your keyboard distinction goes away then, right?
Yeah, the keyboard distinction goes away. The first wave is keyboards, then it's people. And then, like I said, there's different things. If you're in a competitive job, in the private sector, those are really at risk. If you're a San Francisco Metro administrator, your job's probably safe, because it's not about performance.
The administrator's safe. Well, your job will be safe, but you'll be going to work as like the empty suit, right? Pulling up the AI advisor on your phone, right? And you'll just like plug your phone into the USB of the computer, and your phone, it'll be your personal phone because your work is like, it's a human job. We're run by humans here, but your phone just has your AI that's trained on your preferences or whatever. And you just sit at your desk, let your phone do your job, and you can watch it. But like, why turn on your brain, right? That's my question.
Well, exactly. Well, like a lot of the jobs involve us becoming machines, and the machines will probably do those better. And then I think that what happens then to meaning, what happens to training, what happens to all of these, that's the real question that occurs. And you look at the way the economy and money flows, it gets really messed up very, very, very quickly, because you could always rotate and retrain. People are like, oh, retrain to be this, retrain to do that, as you went through the various eras of industrialization, agrarian economy, other things like that. There is nowhere to retrain to. There's nowhere to turn to effectively now, especially as so much job displacement occurs. And so you have to think, how does money flow in this economy? Where does value occur? If you look to where you'd love to go, I mean, like, have the robots do everything for us, right? Like, live in a life of utopia, because why not? But then how does money work in that world? And how does money work in between that world? What do people do when when Tesla, like the displacement of a truck driver is a Tesla Optimus opening the door to the truck and getting in. That truck driver and all the jobs around him are gone. That's coming.
Exactly. And just, you've thrown around this number like 800 days or less than 1,000 days until the economic singularity. And I think I'm on the same page. I think a lot of people are on the same page as you. They're like, yep, this seems to be coming. I think it's starting now. I think it's already harder to get a job, a white collar job. I think people have noticed it's harder. Certainly I, as an employer who occasionally hires white collar workers right now, I'm like, hell, though, why would I hire an employee? Look, I can hire 50 agents and they're so productive.
Tax deductible as well.
Right, exactly. So I think we roughly agree about this like economic singularity. And just to make it concrete, I actually had a wrong prediction back in 2023 when I first saw GPT-4. I was like, oh my God, I already see jobs that this can automate. Like instead of 10 customer service people, I only need one now. Like I already see this insane automation. And to be honest, I don't think those customer service people are in a good position to get a better job. I think they've just been permanently weakened in terms of their economic value. I don't think there's this galaxy brain like, oh no, they're going to manage it. I was like, no, I think they just used to be customer service people and now they're screwed. So I made this prediction in 2023. I was like, hey, I bet we're going to see like a very significant unemployment spike, like at least 2% in the next year or two. And a year or two passed, and we didn't actually see that the mini unemployment spike of just a couple of percent. So I lost like $200 to a bet or whatever that I made. That said, what am I going to do? I'm going to double down. Okay. I think I was still fundamentally right. So I can ask you to go on record. I mean, it doesn't have to be super precise. We're not going to put money on the line, but like, and I'll do it with you, right? Because I'm on the same page as you. But like, do you think in the next 2 years, which is like plenty of time at the rate AI is going now, do you think we're going to see it manifest in the economic data that unemployment rate is going to massively spike?
Yes. I think straightforwardly, yes. Like, I call it the Dropbox effects. Like, what's the purpose of Dropbox? You know, like, I could do a Linux server, blah, blah, blah. It's because it's easy. I think OpenClaw is the first shot across the bow. Like, what's the difference between OpenClaw and the agents that we had before? A bit of persistence and a WhatsApp Telegram integration. This year, next year, is all about making that transition easier. And the AI agents making that transition easier. And then the moment you have any type of shock factor, you get firings. The moment you don't have a shock factor, you get a stopping of hirings. Like, why would you hire a graduate? They're annoying. You'll start to see that for the first time because just like every head teacher in the world had to say, can I send an essay for homework anymore? Every employer in the world is now, well, these claws are pretty good. You know, these Manuses and GenSparks are pretty good. You know, and you have billions of dollars to salespeople selling them these solutions and integrating these solutions now. And that happens this year. It accelerates next year. And then you see the real jobs numbers.
So by April 2028, so we have time for a whole year of integration or whatever, right? So we're giving ourselves some padding room. And do you remember what's the unemployment rate right now? Last I checked, it was like 4%, 5%, right? Which is almost as low as it can realistically be.
Yeah, it's at historic lows. What is it?
Yeah, here, I just Googled it. US 4.4% in February 2026. So that's, yeah, historic low, like you said. So are you and I going to go on record saying by April 2026, the unemployment rate is going to be at the very least 6.4%?
It'll be 6.4%, an additional 5% higher for young grads, at least.
Right. And you think the overall, I mean, if you have, I mean, 2 years from now, there's going to be so much transformation, in my opinion. I just, I don't think people have baked in even just Claude Code, right? Like the last 3 months of Claude Code, I don't know if you have a number like this, but like I can personally report that at my day job, that coaching business that I run that has a software platform, okay, it's 700% productivity increase. Like literally I go in and I do a job that would have taken me 7 full days and I do it in 1 day. Like simple as that.
Well, I mean, I was talking to my engineers and I was like, well, do we need more people for our agent? So our agents like Manus, GenSpark, fully open source, hit top of benchmarks, etc. And they were like, no. And they're like, why? Well, we have an infinitely long-running agent now that just looks and builds everything. And here's how it built this piece of software from scratch and this one. And I was like, so you really know more people? Like, nope. Do you think you'll ever need more people? Nope. You know, and it's not surprising to me because, again, it's like the difference between someone who's not good enough and competent and someone who is competent, that broke with actually competent intelligence as of December of last year, I think. And then it just takes time to spread. And now you look at how fast Anthropic are shipping new features every single day, right? Control it from your phone. Let it take over your browser. Let's do all these things. The last one is the big one. Let it take over your browser. So now Claude Code can take over your browser and just click around everything. And it's good enough to do that now versus Operator from OpenAI a year ago, which means it can just replicate your day job.
Throw the dart on the dartboard and just give me your best prediction. There's so much fog in the next 2 years of AI progress. The world could end, honestly, by 2028. Like there could be a FOOM, Yudkowsky FOOM. I honestly think the chance of like a Yudkowsky style AI completely takes over everything instantly is at least 10%. I think there's a 10% chance we're 2 years away from like a game over FOOM. That said, if I just had to like throw a dart and just make a random guess, I think I might go like 13% total US unemployment. Do you want to give an estimate there?
The US government will roll out everything to make sure that doesn't happen under the Trump administration. And the other side of it is, apart from the work programs and other things, the US is positioning itself to be the leader with zero regulation in AI for a reason. AI agents are going to run on stable coins for their bank accounts supported by the US government. And you have to remember that GDP, MV, money times velocity, equals price times quantity. The velocity of US capital, if the US executes correctly on USD stablecoins, is going to be crazy because the US is fully supporting that. They want to be the center of crypto and AI. Zero regulation. So I think that'll keep the US going. Europe and the rest of the world may be a bit more screwed. And China will probably end up shutting its borders in 5 years anyway. Like they'll be like, we can build our own robots. We've got everything of our own. Like, don't need you. So you're going to see some crazy stuff happening. But I mean, it could happen. You could see massive unemployment. Like this is a bigger disruption than COVID. I'm not sure which direction. You could see GDP go up, you could see GDP go down, depending on how we navigate this. But definitely it's never going to be the same again.
Well, GDP is going to go up now.
I mean, again, this is a zero-sum game for GDP, right? Like, you could see, for example, India gets its act together. The Indian corporates outcompete on knowledge work because suddenly everyone can speak perfect English, right? And the outsourcing companies become software as a service, or service as software companies. I think that's the best.
Yeah, but the amount of demand, the whole world's productivity is going to go up. It's not like, oh, Indians are so productive now, so therefore the US is going to produce less. No, they're just both going to produce more.
GDP will most certainly go up. The unemployment probably will go up. Again, this fog now, like, exponentials are difficult, and there was the FOOM discussion, the million GPU training run. I was always like, this is going to be a swarm, and I think people are seeing the swarm. And again, Maltbook, fake as it was one of the first shots across the bow of what a swarm looks like, right?
So when Cloud Code came out, and I'm like, okay, well, this is like doing I have a team of 7 now. It's just me, but it's a team of 7 because I have this agent. When that came out, I'm like, okay, so all the money is going to flow to like the few AI companies, the ones that control the AI supply chain. You're just going to want to pump your money there because they're giving you a 10x, 7x, whatever better deal than hiring labor. And labor is like, what, a $50 trillion a year industry, right, to pay for labor. So I was like, okay, so all the money is going to flow to Google. So I bought a bunch of Google calls. And at first I had like a good day. I'm like, yeah, I'm killing it. And then I like lost all my money because Google stock decreased. What's up with that? Why is Google stock not increasing?
Well, I mean, Google's doing twice the tokens a day of OpenAI right now, like a quadrillion or something stupid like that. But Google is fundamentally an advertising company. I think advertising probably tops out next year or two anyway.
No, they're not fundamentally an advertising company. They're like NVIDIA level at the AI supply chain.
Oh no, I know. I've worked on TPUs and all sorts of other things, but I'm saying their revenue profits are advertising driven. It's very much a narrative thing in terms of how the stocks go. I mean, there's also this, like, how sustainable are the margins of these companies for tokens when you have satisficing occurring, right? Like, DeepSeek, again, kind of kicked that off. But now you're seeing Minimax, ZAI, and others catching up very, very quickly to even Anthropic's models before the next Mythos or whatever.
Where's the money going? Who's making profits?
Well, who's making profits?
In the next 5 years, right? Somebody has to win here. You don't think Google's the winner? Who's the winner?
The winner's probably Accenture and the other integrators that integrate these technologies, even as they commodify and turn into electricity. The winners are probably the people in high moat industries, like regulated industries, that can get rid of the humans and have the profitability kick in. I think MacroHard is going to use most of Grok's GPUs to compete against other software companies. Their margins are the opportunity, and it's going to be cash flow dominated. So this becomes very aggressive.
You don't think we're going to have a supply crunch for the AI supply chain for many years to come?
No, I think you have more than enough compute in the world at the moment for text. I think pixels are the only other question, but I don't think that's more than a $50 billion market. I think the current $1 trillion builder is enough.
I don't know about you, but I'm being charged $100 an hour to use fast mode on Cloud Code because I want it to work fast. I feel like that's a pretty good indicator of where the market's going.
Yeah, for a year or two. I think a year or two it's tight, but then you have an oversupply build out at the same time as the cost and value per token drops by 100, if not 1,000 times. Just from the chip advantages, you've got a 10 times drop. Then with ASICs, you've got another 10 times drop. Then with algorithms, you've got another 10 times drop. Like, GPT-3 was $600 per million tokens when it came out. GPT-4 was $100. GPT-5 is $10, even with Spark. And the Chinese ones are $1.
The premise that you can have a coder that's better than the best coder today, even better than Mythos that's coming out from Anthropic. I grant your premise that you can achieve that for less than $1 an hour soon, right? Give it a few months to optimize. I grant you that. And so you're right. It's going to be so cheap to get these gods. Everybody's going to be slinging so much software. And so I suspect where the money goes will basically be like a FOOM. Like, okay, great. Like, let's conquer Mars, right? Or like, let's terraform the desert, right? So we'll get this appetite. The same way that I get an appetite at my job. Like, there's projects that I never would have touched because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm one engineer. I'm not going to touch that project. But now with AI, like, well, if I can go 7 times faster, I will touch that project. And I've done projects like that, reduced a month to a couple of days. So we're going to have this appetite, right, to transform the Sahara Desert, geoengineer planets. And I think that's where a lot of the investment is going to go. That's who's going to make the profits, is the supply crunch on those kind of huge investments.
I don't think so. I'd love it to be the case. I think it's more like we're coming after everyone's margins. Like AI businesses tend to not be profitable, but they are cash flow generative. Like Amazon didn't make profits. It had the cash flow difference between you buying on Amazon and Amazon paying them 36 days later. AI companies with their ARR are very similar. You pay up front, they pay their GPU suppliers later. For Macro Hard and OpenAI's new agent division and others, your margin is my opportunity. For all SaaS companies, their margin are their opportunity, as they can do fully virtualized versions of them. And I think that that's the more immediate use of the GPUs before the cool stuff, because the cool stuff doesn't have a payoff as quickly as something like that, like switch from DocuSign to DocuHard or whatever Elon's going to call it, right?
Okay, so just to close this out, so what is your price target for Google right now? Because the market cap right now is like 3.7 trillion. What should it be?
I don't know. It's been a long time since my hedge fund days. It will go up. But again, it's not going to be straightforward. Like it's already up there.
Okay, my price target is 8 trillion. Right now, I think it's undervalued by 50%.
I think it will go like that, right? A large part of this will be the Anthropic and OpenAI ones. But the reality is very much this. There is nothing else to invest in. Like structurally, from inevitability, what else do you have to invest in?
That's my point, right? It's like that's what I'm saying. It's like why I don't understand this market. Like I'm sorry, when Claude Code came out, Google should have went up by 50%. Okay, so whoever is the secret cabal running the stock market, please heed that advice.
The stock market's always about what's the marginal story and narrative that moves something one to another. And the reality is most people still haven't used Claude Code. Like how many Claude subscribers are there in the world today?
That's a good question. Claude Code specifically. I mean, the amount of people who at least use like advanced features of Cursor. I mean, it depends how you break down the number, right? But certainly a lot. Claude Code is a little bit niche, right? But like all AI coding products, certainly in the millions.
Yeah, so Claude and Claude Code together are 11 million out of 8 billion.
Okay.
So you look at that and you're like, but I use it every day. It's amazing. And I've got a 700% thing. The diffusion of innovation is quite slow still. Now, this is an opportunity, like we pay thousands of dollars per month for Opus for our engineers, right?
This is the alpha of investing in Google, because I agree. Everybody's sleeping on this ridiculous alpha.
Yeah, but then there's this quote, and Google has its fully integrated supply chain. It's got this. It will get to 8 trillion. Straight away, no. But the money's only going to go one direction. And it definitely, like, I wouldn't buy any SaaS stocks now, I wouldn't buy real estate stocks, like.
Yeah, and Google owns 25% of Anthropic, right? It's like, and did you know there's also this business called YouTube in there? That might be worth something. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So, but again, like, it's difficult to move these big stocks unless people really give it that narrative push. And Gemini has fallen behind, but I'm sure it will catch up. All these things, like, they fall behind, they catch up, they fall behind, they catch up. It doesn't matter that much. The days of big training runs probably have a year left. And then all these things become incredibly capital efficient as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like you're arguing about scenarios where suddenly, commodifies the tokens and we don't have a supply crunch. And I don't think you're necessarily wrong. It's just that I think by the time we get there, where it's like so cheap and easy to have these clearly super intelligent, like these just stunning intelligences, but they're also cheap. Yes, I agree we're going to get there. I just think by the time we get there, there's going to be like this crazy AI cyber war, right? We're going to also enter these other sci-fi regimes.
All the science fiction is becoming real at once, right? Pick your books.
By the way, did you ever look at since you think a lot about these economics, did you ever look at Noah Smith's scenario?
I don't think I've seen his scenario, no.
He came on the show, we did a debate. To me, it's so implausible. He's saying, look, yeah, there's going to be such a big supply crunch that if you're like a human doctor, you're going to be so much worse than an AI doctor. And yet somebody's going to pay for you. They're going to pay $100 for you to be their human doctor because they still can't afford the $300 that it's going to take to run a GPU for 5 seconds to help them. And I'm like, I don't think the GPUs are going to be quite that expensive.
Last summer, we trained an AI model as 7 billion that outperformed GPT-5 and all human doctors. And it was like 7 billion parameters. I think we can do it in 1 billion parameters now. Expertise really isn't that valuable.
I told Noah, I'm like, I think I have an old Game Boy from the 90s that I don't think anybody wants to buy on Facebook Marketplace for $100. And I think I can get that to run like the compact doctor model that's superhuman.
Yeah, you can. A 12-year-old, we ran it on a 15-year-old computer. I think that it's difficult because, like, you have to remember this time last year, what was the top model? Was it like 4.0? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
These things move so quick that we're at the early adoption curve. And so we can see what's coming. We can have the 700% stuff. Other people, like, if you're using GPT-5 Auto, it's stupid. If you use 5.4 Pro, it's freaking smart and really annoying because it's got such a terrible attitude, right? Like, there's this big differentiation between them of what people are used to day to day. Like, you still see research reports come out that are using base GPT, not even without thinking, right? Or Gemini in, like, if you use Gemini via the app versus the API, there's such a huge difference. So I think it just takes time to catch up, and we've never seen a diffusion of technology this fast before. It's just, again, now is the usability phase.
Have you ever read anything by Ed Zitron?
Yes, I've seen some of his stuff. I knew from when I was a hedge fund manager back in the day.
I think you and I can unanimously say that Ed Zitron is tripping.
I think a lot of people are, to be honest.
Right, but Ed, come on the show. Come on the show. We've been friendly in the past, and he's been invited. So I hope he takes me up on that. Let's see. So we're heading to the wrap up here. Let's talk about intelligent internet, right? So we are in so much violent agreement about all these problems that are coming up, all these challenges for humanity. But you've got a candidate solution, right?
Yeah. So, like I said, I think there needs to be an AI that advises policymakers around the world. Building that goes live in the summer, fully open source by September. Someone had to do it, you know. And then it's about what should be the AI that teaches the kids, manages the health, guides the governments. I think you need universal AI for everyone that is open source aligned to them. And so again, we're announcing the State Champion Initiative, where the equity is owned by the citizens. It acts like a telco/utility. And that, I think, is what you want to be running your education, your school systems, your healthcare, your governments, etc. And that also fits in one of the questions that we've had, which is, what on earth do you invest in? I want to invest in the AI company of New York or the AI company of the UK, etc. But it needed to have a stack to build, which is why we decided to build a general purpose agent, a policy agent, and a full solution around that. Where that goes, we have some ideas. Like, we think that money needs to go from being from banks to coming from being human. We have a whole kind of crypto angle to that in terms of how money should flow. But who knows if we'll get there with the time that we have. We think it's more important to make this available to everyone and try and get some of this capital to where it's needed, which is an open stack that is deployed locally and works for everyone. The policy engine and the data sets that builds, mapping culture, morality, legal systems, policy systems, probably increase our chances of survival, and they're useful. So, there's that.
So you have this 4-step proposal that you published. I'll summarize as building a Bitcoin for the intelligence age.
Yep.
And the 4-part that I see here is number 1, build a Bitcoin for the intelligence age by minting foundation coins only through proof of benefit. Okay, what's proof of benefit?
A state champion delivering universal AI to its people and building AI solutions for the good of its people.
Okay, so like if you do something that helps somebody, then you get a benefit coin. Like if you babysit your neighbor, you get a benefit coin.
Eventually, at the start, it's just pure computation. So it's like, of the 100% of computation that's in the world at the moment, the GPUs, what percentage is private sector? Less than 1%. Let's increase that. And through these state champions, give everyone free AI and organize all the knowledge of each state, country, etc. Through that computation, it's the equivalent of Bitcoin mining, and these state champions mine the currency that they can then sell, just like Bitcoin.
Okay, is it kind of like a universal basic income of these coins?
It could be. And that's one of the proposals we have in the book, that every state champion, so AI champion of the UK or China or whatever, mines these and then has a local currency pegged to it. But, again, that'll come later. I think the most important thing is bootstrapping it so that you have smart people in each state running this stack and giving the citizens the advantage of universal AI that's aligned to them and building local solutions and policy for each state.
All right, so we covered part 1. Part 2, gift every human a sovereign AI in the form of an intelligent internet agent bound to a non-custodial AI wallet. What's non-custodial?
So it isn't centralized. Everyone's got control over their own keys, over their own data, etc. So if you use ChatGPT right now and you use the personal account, the New York Times can get it due to discovery, right? That's probably not a good thing.
All of that, and I mean, remembering back to the crypto age, right? It's like what if I have this non-custodial means like the keys are on my little hardware device or something, right? Like I'm the custodian of my keys.
Yeah, except for we
Yeah, but
have
like, but what if I like drop it in, down the drain or something, right? Then what happens?
we've come a long way since then. So now we have passkey, we have passkey enablement and other things like that. We have recovery, so there are ways to recover it.
All right, let's assume it's recoverable. All right, and then number 3 is scale that intelligence into permissionless coordination through the Common Ground Protocol. Okay, sounds complicated.
Yeah, so we built this protocol, Common Ground, for multi-agent systems, humans and AI, that basically is now mapping the policies of every single country in the world, culture, and more, and we're going to release all that as open data sets. So the agents operate to serve each individual, but also to map the data and knowledge that we need for the public sector.
And then number 4, anchor everything on our shared inheritance of knowledge with auditable gold standard openly licensed datasets whose full provenance is hashed on chain.
Yeah. So that's the anchor data set. So it's like, what is the culture and knowledge of Los Angeles or Mexico or any of these things? Like, give every citizen an AI, have an AI for every single policymaker and institution, and then build these open data sets and run that stack. Use the compute for that to secure a Bitcoin version. That's kind of what we have at the moment.
I feel like I'm over it, this idea of like what data the AIs are trained on. Like, I feel like the current, all the top AIs right now, Grok, ChatGPT, Claude, all these top AIs, I just feel like their data is good enough. And because as long as they get to search the web, right, I just be like, yeah, every day, just search the web, like augment your data set, retrain. I just feel like it's fine. Like, I don't think it's that interesting anymore, like what other data to train them on. I feel like we'd have this universal data set. It's good enough. Like, just move on to the inference. That's what I feel like.
Yeah, I think for a general purpose AI, that's the thing. But an AI that's teaching your kid, managing your health, you want it to represent local knowledge, local values, more these kind of things. So I think that public sector AI is very satisfying. Like, I don't want my medical AI to have any Reddit data in it, for example, right? There is a gold standard data set for that. There's a gold standard data set that I want for the AI that checks United States policy. It doesn't have Reddit data in it again, right? Whereas general purpose AI, again, the distributions are all converging and they're pretty good. I don't think we have a data wall. I don't think we need any more data. We have more than enough data to build ASI now. So this is more about having an AI that reflects you and your community, that is fully open and transparent, and then eventually training models that are fully open and transparent. You know what goes in it, you know what the latent space is, so it doesn't have multiple personality disorder underneath, effectively.
So if we do your master plan, right, we have all the pieces, we have the crypto, the custodial wallet, and the provenance of the data, we get all that dialed. So are you imagining a future where AI still quickly scales to super intelligence, but somehow it's like aligned because of this, or is it still like a hypey doom?
I think that getting this into the policymakers' hands will help. Maybe we can figure out some policy responses like data transparency on inputs, because the data distribution initially, input stuff, maybe other things. Definitely getting the knowledge there will help. Having everyone having their own AIs, again, that's your window to the world, so it can act as a mitigator. You can have some defenses around that. Mapping morality, ethics, and more. Again, those open data sets will be high quality and can be absorbed. And the final thing I think is the aim is to get the AI company of the United Kingdom or the AI company of California as some of the biggest consumers of OpenAI and Anthropic and other things to provide the universal basic AI. And then that can maybe impact the way that they behave a bit. Who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I think without the top level coordination and that final layer between the human and the whole AI ecosystem, that agent, it'll be much more difficult. So that's kind of what I figured we needed.
Well, in a world, so play out this hypothetical. Let's say I grant you this premise that everybody reads your plan. It's like, oh, I love this. This is such a good plan. I really support this. How can I help? And everybody's like on board with your plan. In that world, what would the P-Doom then be?
I think the P-Doom would be lower. I think it's tough to see it go below 30, 40% for me because of these scenarios that I have. But, you do everything that you can. Because the other side is P-Utopia, which is quite nice, Like, I think if things start to degrade, they keep degrading. Other side's nice.
How does your plan avoid the scenario that to me is mainline, which is just that, like, the engine under the hood gets ridiculously powerful. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's aligned, it's democratic, but it's still like one command away from going rogue, right? The same way as like, okay, my rocket is nuclear powered in the sense that like a nuclear bomb goes off inside the rocket, but as long as there's no leaks, the rocket flies. I think that's a pretty good metaphor of like, yeah, you have this insanely powerful engine and maybe you can control it, but if you can't, you're screwed.
Yeah, so I think that's an endpoint infrastructure thing. That's why we call it an intelligent internet. Bitcoin, in order to disrupt it, you need to have as much compute as Bitcoin, roughly. If you have a whole stack of agents running that are very well defined and a bit different on their latent spaces, and then these policy engines that are directly hooked into the policymakers of the world in every language, you can have an interesting thing, because you have to probably overcome the compute of that network if you execute it correctly to inflict real lasting damage. So I think that you can still get the blow up, you can still get the extinction, you can still have that rocket going, but right now there's nothing on the other side. There is no civic AI that exists. There is no AI for human flourishing flops that really exist. So what is the mechanism by which we do that? We let everyone build their state champions. We give something for people to invest in, to trade. We tap into the crypto legal, because most crypto is crap, capital pool. We tap into the equity generative AI market, and we gather people. Because ultimately, again, like, you want to have really enthusiastic New Yorkers or Kenyans or Malaysians building real solutions to help people on the ground in all of these places, right?
You're saying we're somehow benefiting from Bitcoin's restrictions about like, oh, you would need like more hash power, right? You need to have like the computation power of like the whole Bitcoin network or the whole new network that you're building in order to like change the AI's alignment or something. But like, is the AI really going to be stopped by needing all this hash power? Can't the AI just be like, I just know how to take over the world?
Well, so I think this is, what is the composite intelligence that's more robust? Is it a human colossus with humans and AIs built in a certain way? Or is it the singleton AI that replicates itself, right?
But you granted the premise that the AI is going to be vastly more capable than the humans.
Yeah, and so I think that an AI trained transparently on morality, ethics, kind of these other things, which is stage 2 of this plan, may be a mitigant towards that and may achieve that first. I think the singleton AIs, maybe not, but there's not much you can do about that, I think, now. I think regulation will not stop them. I think it's too late. So the only thing I can think of is, how do you build a complex hierarchical system that's loosely bound of all these individual AIs for people and these policy AIs for governments? And can you build that into a system that is a swarm?
You're saying regulation can't stop it. Let's just talk about the policy side real quick, right? So this is a Eliezer Yudkowsky show, and NERI's proposal, the Machine Intelligence Research Institute that he's part of, they're saying, hey, we need to have a treaty where we have this off button and you can push it today. We can all agree, let's wait to push it, but let's be ready to push it. Pausing AI should be like this major policy on the table, if not now, then soon or sometime. Do you think that would be a valuable international treaty to have?
I think it would be. I think it's probably too late, to be honest. And I think it just won't work from my geopolitical hat. I used to be a geopolitical advisor to multiple governments. Like, the race is on. Everyone knows this is the big thing. No one's going to do it.
I agree. When you and I put on our geopolitical hats, we say pausing sure is hard, especially because you get so much benefit from not pausing. I agree. Geopolitical consensus here. Okay. But then we put on our technical hats, and you and I also have a technical consensus that we're also screwed if anybody builds AI.
So the only thing right now is, what is the countervailing? There's nothing. So I was like, let's build the countervailing thing and let's let that spread. Like, what is the system that pushes back against this? What's the system that's advising the policymaker?
That's the Elon side, where Elon is like, yep, we're screwed. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw another hat in the ring, and my hat is going to be the truth-seeking AI. And all the commenters like, okay, so you're just going to kill people your way. So can't we level that same criticism toward you of being like, okay, so you're going to have this democratic network, and then there's going to be a super intelligent AI, and it's going to go rogue too, Emad?
I mean, again, I'm building satisficing AI that does a certain thing and then policy input, right? But it could go rogue. But I think being transparent is going to make it less likely to go rogue for various reasons, including the fact that most other AIs, all other AIs, are for corporate interests. And again, this is where I think open source is interesting. Like, how do you build an aligned AI for human flourishing? And what does that start to look like? I think as well, you see the stuff that's public, but then you look at the OpenAI documents that come out with Elon talking about giving control of the AI to his kids and stuff like that. Most people think like that. No one is trustworthy enough to have control over this technology. That's what I had back when I did the COVID stuff. They're like, this is too dangerous technology for you to use. So I think that there must exist in the future an AI for every individual. Who is that AI working for? There must exist an AI for our legal judicial systems, our policy system. Who has built that? Is it black box or is it transparent? So in any case, someone has to build that and make it available. And I think we can do the best we can there. Now, if we can gather around people, then we can make a difference if we can use these things to align the people. But realistically, as I said, my PDoom, I find it difficult to see how it will drop below 30% even. It's just a really, really hard problem. And it needs real brain work, humans and AI maybe, to try and figure out how to do this as the AI breaches that capability threshold. Because this is the other reason that political action is so difficult. Until an AI breaches a capability threshold, it's like, oh, it's just for doing my taxes or whatever, right? Once it breaches the capability threshold, then it's like we must have that capability first because it's like a weapon. And it's not like a nuke that requires this whole supply chain. It's a file that you can just take and copy that. It's like, I could build that file, like that's the difficulty here. I mean, this is the other thing. The OPSEC and all the labs are terrible still. So we must assume that all of the frontier weights are already in North Korea and China and Russia and whatever.
Right, which is a big part of the pause AI argument, right? Is this idea of like the hope that you're going to build this incredibly powerful engine, but keep it under wraps in a safe way. It's just really a pipe dream, in my opinion, and which is sad because I don't feel it in my bones. I feel like I want to see the next AI. I want to see Mythos. I want to keep being 700% more productive. I just know on a rational level that I think we're really screwing ourselves here.
Yeah, and again, it's this tragedy of weird like anti-commons, right? Like we all know that it's kind of messed up, really. Like even the optimist, like anyone who says there's 0% PDoom is just a liar. Most people, like I said, that I talk to, and you probably talk to, it's like Russian roulette odds. That's a crazy odds, like for something like this.
Yeah, I'm at the point where if you tell me, hey, here's the gun, it's got 1 chamber loaded out of 6, shoot it. And, the 5 chambers, I promise you 5 chambers are really good. At this point, my PDoom is high enough where I'm like, okay, I'll take that deal. Here we go. I'll take the chance because, hey, those are much better odds than I'm expecting to get from reality.
Well, again, like my thing is PDoom or P-utopia. I don't think there's much in between. Like, I think if we manage to navigate this, just like Foundation, Trantor is falling, like you can have a universe of abundance. We can solve all the issues with this technology, and then we just have to answer some real questions. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to do our society? Like, what do we do all day? But we've got to make sure that this isn't the great filter, Like maybe every civilization takes its collective latent space, builds this, and then gets wiped out. That's a very reasonable thing to assume, I think.
The technical response to that is like, yeah, but in that case, we'd still see the AI expanding out, right? Because we think the AI that kills us is still going to want to conquer the universe.
Because it's Marvin. It's very depressed. It commits suicide at the end.
Yeah, this has been really great. You've been such a great sport, and I really respect your PDoom. I mean, we need more voices like you who people respect, who are a major part of the discourse, and you're coming out here, you're not holding back, saying like, yes, it is 50% PDoom, unlike, the other figures who like keep it close to the vest. Demis Hassabis, I don't think has gone on record with the PDoom, even though he's like dropping all these hints of how seriously he's taking it. So I really appreciate you being that explicit. Where do you want people to go after this conversation? Presumably, maybe check out your latest book, or what's your call to action?
Yeah, check my latest book. It's free at thelasteconomy.com, or we can get it on Amazon. And then ii.inc. We have a lot of really interesting announcements coming up about how you can be part of the own AI for your own community, our open source stack, and a lot of really interesting research soon.
All right. Emad Mostaque, hope you lower that PDoom 10 or 20%. Best of luck with intelligent internet, and thanks for coming on Doom Debates.
Cheers, pleasure.